At the office celebration, my wife said, "Stay away from me tonight," then introduce someone else as her husband. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. The conference room at Midland Solutions smelled like burnt coffee and artificial pine. James Rowan stood near the back wall, watching the company holiday mixer unfold in front of him. People clustered in groups of 3 or 4, holding plastic cups and making the kind of small talk that filled space without meaning anything. He nursed his soda water. The fizz had gone flat 20 minutes ago, but it gave his hand something to do. Lucy had texted him 2 hours before the party started. "Running late. You go ahead. I'll meet you there." That had become the pattern. 6 months of patterns. Actually, if James was being honest with himself, 6 months of Lucy having somewhere else to be first. 6 months of arriving separately, leaving separately, existing in the same house like 2 people passing through an airport terminal. He watched the door. The catering company had set up a table along the far wall with trays of food nobody was touching. Someone from accounting was telling a story that required a lot of hand gestures. The regional manager stood near the makeshift bar, laughing too loud at something that probably wasn't that funny. James checked his phone. No new messages. The door opened. Lucy walked in wearing a dress he'd never seen before. Dark green, fitted at the waist. Professional, but deliberate. Her hair was different too. Styled. She'd taken time with it. She didn't look for him. That was the first thing James noticed. Her eyes swept the room, but they moved past the back wall where he stood. She smiled at someone near the entrance. A man in a gray jacket and dark jeans. Polished shoes. The kind of casual that cost money. The man touched her elbow. They walked into the room together. James watched them move through the crowd. Lucy was laughing. Not the polite laugh she used at these things. The real one. The one that came from her chest and made her shoulders shake slightly. They stopped near the center of the room. Lucy raised her plastic cup. A few people nearby turned toward her. The conversation noise dropped by half. "Sorry to interrupt," Lucy said. Her voice carried. She'd always been good at that, projecting without seeming to try. "I just wanted to clear something up because I know there's been some confusion." James felt his heart rate slow down. That was strange. He expected it to speed up. Instead, everything in his body seemed to go quiet. Focused. Lucy slid her hand into the man's hand. "This is my husband, William Crowell." The room didn't gasp. That only happened in movies. Real life was quieter than that. A few people smiled and clapped, because that's what you did when someone introduced their spouse. Others looked confused. A woman from HR glanced toward the back of the room. Toward James. Lucy saw the glance. She looked at James then. Just for a second. Her eyes met his across 30 feet of rented conference space, and something passed between them. Not regret, not apology, something harder. "James and I have been separated for a long time," she said. Her voice caught just slightly, just enough to sound hurt. "I know some people didn't realize. We've been trying to keep things quiet." The woman from HR nodded sympathetically. William put his arm around Lucy's shoulders. James set his cup down on the nearest table and walked out. Nobody followed him. The parking lot was freezing. January in Minnesota meant the kind of cold that turned your breath into fog and made your lungs ache. James sat in his car with the engine running and the heat turned up. His hands gripped the steering wheel. He didn't cry. He didn't punch the dashboard. He sat there and let his brain work through what had just happened. Lucy had introduced another man as her husband, in front of their co-workers, in front of people who had been at their actual wedding 4 years ago. She'd lied. That part was simple. The question was why she'd lied like that. Publicly, deliberately, with witnesses. James pulled out his phone and scrolled back through their text messages. Nothing unusual. She'd asked him to pick up milk on Tuesday. He'd reminded her about the water bill on Thursday. On Friday, she'd sent him a link to a recipe she wanted to try. Normal couple things. He opened his banking app. Their joint account showed the usual transactions. Groceries. Gas. The mortgage payment had cleared on the first like always. He switched to his personal account, the one he kept separate since before they were married. Everything looked normal there too. James started driving. The house was dark when he got home. He parked in a driveway and sat for a moment before going inside. Their neighborhood looked like every other middle-class suburb outside Madison Lake. Modest homes with two-car garages and front yards that nobody used. In summer, kids rode bikes on the sidewalk. In winter, everyone stayed inside except to shovel. He unlocked the front door. The living room felt wrong immediately. The couch was gone. The TV stand was gone. The bookshelf that used to sit against the west wall was gone. James walked through the house, turning on lights. The dining table was still there, but the chairs were missing. In the bedroom, Lucy's dresser had been emptied. The closet showed gaps where her clothes used to hang. The bathroom counter was clean. No makeup, no hair products, no toothbrush. He checked the office. The filing cabinet was gone, the one where they kept important documents. Birth certificates, tax returns, the deed to the house. James opened his desk drawer. His passport was missing. He stood there for a minute, looking at the empty space where it should have been. Then he walked back to the kitchen and found a note on the counter. Lucy's handwriting. Neat. Precise. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. James read it twice. Then he sat down at the kitchen table and started making a list. The first call came at 7 the next morning. A coworker from the marketing department. They'd worked together on a project last spring. Hey man, just wanted to check in. Are you doing okay? James was already up, drinking coffee and going through bank statements on his laptop. I'm fine, he said. Why? After last night. That looked rough. It was unexpected, James said. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The kind that meant the person wanted to say something but didn't know how. Look, if you need anything, or if you just want to grab a beer and talk. I appreciate that, James said. He didn't grab a beer and talk. By noon, 3 more people had reached out. 2 coworkers and someone from the gym he barely knew. By evening, his supervisor called and asked if he needed some space to process things. Process what things? James asked. The separation. Lucy mentioned you two have been going through a difficult time. Did she? She seemed pretty upset about it. I just want to make sure you're okay. And if you need to take a few personal days, that's completely understandable. James thanked him and hung up. He spent the evening reconstructing timelines. Lucy had started acting different around August. 6 months ago, that's when she joined a book club that met on Thursday nights. That's when she'd started going to the gym before work instead of after. That's when she'd suggested they maintain separate social calendars to give each other space. James pulled up their joint credit card statement. There, August 15th, a charge at a restaurant he didn't recognize. $73. Lucy had told him she was at book club that night. He kept scrolling. August 22nd, another restaurant. Different location. $92. September brought hotel charges. Small ones. The kind of place you use for a few hours, not a full night. James made notes. He didn't get angry. Anger was noise. Anger was useless. He organized. 2 weeks after the holiday party, a process server showed up at James's office. Professional. Polite. The woman handed him an envelope and asked him to sign a form confirming receipt. What is this? James asked. Divorce petition and restraining order request, she said. You'll want to read through it carefully. James signed the form. He waited until he got home to open the envelope. The petition was 14 pages long. Lucy was filing for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse, financial control, and intimidation. She requested full ownership of the marital home, spousal support payments of $2,000 per month, and a court order preventing James from contacting her directly or through intermediaries. The supporting documentation described a marriage where Lucy had felt trapped, controlled, and afraid. She detailed incidents of James monitoring her spending, questioning her whereabouts, and creating an environment of constant surveillance. James read through it twice. Then he pulled out the files he'd been building. Bank statements showing Lucy had access to all accounts. Credit card statements showing she'd made purchases without restriction. Text message logs showing normal, mundane communication. Photos from their last vacation together where they both looked happy. He called a lawyer his mother had used years ago. The woman answered on the 3rd ring. I need representation, James said. My wife is filing for divorce and making allegations that aren't true. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Yes. Bring every financial document you have. Bank statements, credit cards, tax returns. If you have communications between you and your wife, bring those too. Texts, emails, anything written. I have all of that, James said. Good. Most people don't think to keep records until it's too late. James had been keeping records since he was 12 years old. His mother had lost everything in her divorce. James was old enough to remember it clearly. The way his father's lawyer had painted her as unstable, irresponsible, unfit. The way the judge had believed it. The way she'd walked out of the courthouse with nothing except debt and a custody arrangement that gave her every other weekend. His mother had cried for 3 months. Then she'd stopped crying and started rebuilding. She taught James something important. The world didn't care about fair. The world cared about evidence, documentation, facts that couldn't be argued with. Never rely on people believing you, she told him. Make it so they have no choice. James had watched her reconstruct her life through paperwork. Receipts that proved she'd paid for things his father claimed were his. Bank records that showed deposits his father said never happened. Phone logs that demonstrated she'd tried to maintain contact with her kids when his father said she'd abandoned them. It took her 4 years to get back to court. The judge had reversed the custody arrangement. By then, James was 16 and old enough to choose where he lived. He chose his mother. The temporary hearing was scheduled for early February. James sat in the courtroom next to his lawyer and watched Lucy walk in with her attorney. She wore a gray suit. Conservative. Her hair was pulled back. No jewelry except her wedding ring. She was still wearing her wedding ring. That was interesting. The judge was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses and a no-nonsense expression. She looked at the petition, looked at James, looked at Lucy. This is a temporary hearing to address immediate concerns, she said. Mrs. Rowan, you're requesting a restraining order and exclusive use of the marital home. You claim your husband has engaged in emotional abuse and financial control. Can you explain the nature of these allegations? Lucy's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client has been living in fear for the past year. Her husband monitors her every move, questions every purchase, and has created an environment where she feels constantly watched and judged. Mrs. Rowan, I'd like to hear from you directly. Lucy stood. She looked at the judge, not at James. I just want peace, she said. Her voice was quiet, steady. I've been trying to leave for months, but I was afraid of how he'd react. When I finally found the courage to move out, he started tracking my bank accounts and demanding explanations for everything I bought. Did your husband ever threaten you physically? No, it wasn't like that. It was more subtle. He made comments about how I spent money. He'd ask where I'd been and who I'd been with. He made me feel like I couldn't do anything without his permission. The judge looked at James. Mr. Rowan, how do you respond to these allegations? James's lawyer stood. Your Honor, these claims are demonstrably false. We have bank statements showing Mrs. Rowan had full access to all marital accounts. She made purchases without restriction. She traveled without question. The text message records between my client and Mrs. Rowan show normal, mundane communication between spouses. There's no evidence of control, monitoring, or abuse of any kind. May I see these records? James's lawyer handed over 3 folders. Bank statements, credit card bills, printed text messages. The judge put on her reading glasses and started going through them. Lucy sat down. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. The courtroom was quiet except for the sound of pages turning. After 10 minutes, the judge looked up. Mrs. Rowan, these bank records show you made several large withdrawals in the months leading up to your departure. Can you explain those? Lucy's lawyer answered. My client was securing funds for her safety, Your Honor. She needed resources to establish independence. The withdrawals total almost $30,000 from the joint account. That's a significant amount to remove without discussion. She was afraid her husband would prevent her from accessing those funds once she left. Did you discuss these withdrawals with your husband, Mrs. Rowan? No, Lucy said. Why not? Because he controlled everything. I knew he wouldn't let me have the money if I asked. The judge looked at the bank statements again. According to these records, you had equal access to these accounts for the entire duration of marriage. Is that correct? Yes, and you made numerous purchases, some quite large, without any apparent restriction? He would question me about them later. Did he ever prevent a purchase? Lucy hesitated. Not directly. The judge set the papers down. I'm denying the restraining order request. I don't see evidence of abuse or threat. However, I'm granting Mrs. Rowan continued residence in the marital home until the final hearing. Mr. Rowan, you'll need to find alternative housing for now. James's lawyer nodded. They'd expected that. Both parties will maintain equal access to all marital accounts. The judge continued. No further large withdrawals without court approval. We'll reconvene in 60 days for the final hearing. Until then, no contact between parties except through legal counsel. She banged her gavel. Lucy stood and walked out without looking at James. In the hallway, her lawyer was talking to her in low tones. James couldn't hear what they were saying, but Lucy's expression had changed. The soft vulnerability from the courtroom was gone. She looked irritated. James's lawyer touched his elbow. That went well. She showed her hand too early. What do you mean? She claimed you controlled the finances, but the records prove otherwise. She claimed you monitored her, but the text messages show you barely asked her where she was going. She's establishing a pattern of dishonesty. The judge noticed. Will that matter at the final hearing? Everything matters. Judges remember when people lie to them. James nodded. He spent the night at a hotel near the highway. The room was clean and impersonal. He ordered takeout and went through the rest of the financial records. There was something he'd missed. He pulled up Lucy's personal credit card, the one she'd had before they got married. He never paid attention to it because she'd always paid it off herself. The balance had been $2,000 when they got married. Now it was $18,000. James started going through the charges. Restaurants, hotels, clothing stores, a jewelry purchase for $1,200. He cross-referenced the dates with his own calendar. Every charge corresponded with a night Lucy said she was at book club or the gym or visiting a friend. James pulled up the joint checking account again. Lucy had made regular payments toward that credit card. From their joint money. His money. She'd been funding a relationship with another man using their shared finances while claiming James controlled her spending. James made more notes. He didn't see Lucy again until the final hearing. 60 days had given him time to collect more evidence. His lawyer had hired a forensic accountant who'd gone through every transaction from the past 2 years. The findings were interesting. Lucy had opened a joint credit card with William Crowell 8 months ago. She transferred $6,000 in debt from her personal card to that joint card. She hadn't told William the debt was from her marriage to James. How do we know she didn't tell him? James asked his lawyer. We subpoenaed his financial records. He filed a fraud complaint with the credit card company 2 weeks ago, claiming he didn't authorize some of the charges. He didn't know about the debt transfer. He knows now. Yes. The final hearing was in early April. The courthouse was the same. The judge was the same. Lucy wore a different suit. Navy blue this time. William wasn't with her. The judge reviewed the evidence both sides had submitted. The forensic accountant's report. The timeline of Lucy's withdrawals. The credit card transfers. Lucy's lawyer argued that the debt was marital in nature and should be split equally. James's lawyer pointed out that the debt was incurred during an extramarital relationship and therefore shouldn't be James's responsibility. The judge asked Lucy directly about the timeline. When did your relationship with Mr. Crowell begin? Last August, while you were still married to Mr. Rowan? Yes, but we were separated emotionally. The marriage was over. Did you discuss separation or divorce with Mr. Rowan before beginning a relationship with Mr. Crowell? No. Why not? I didn't feel safe. The judge looked at the bank records again. Mrs. Rowan, you claimed at the temporary hearing that your husband controlled your finances. These records show that's not accurate. You had full access to all accounts. You made large purchases without restriction. You withdrew significant sums of money. Can you explain the discrepancy between your claims and the evidence? Lucy's face went tight. I felt controlled. That's different from being technically restricted. Can you give me an example of how you felt controlled? He would ask questions about where I'd been, what I'd bought. Did you live together? Yes. Isn't it normal for spouses to discuss their days and their purchases? Lucy didn't answer. The judge set the papers down. Based on the evidence presented, I'm ruling as follows. The marital home will be sold, and the proceeds split equally. Mrs. Rowan's request for spousal support is denied. Each party will be responsible for their own debts incurred after August of last year. The debt Mrs. Rowan transferred to the joint credit card with Mr. Crowell is her sole responsibility. Lucy's lawyer started to object. The judge held up a hand. "I'm not finished. Mrs. Rowan, you made serious allegations about your husband that the evidence doesn't support. You claimed abuse when the records show a normal marriage. You claimed financial control when you had equal access and unlimited spending. You removed significant assets from the marital home without discussion. These actions demonstrate a pattern of dishonesty that undermines your credibility. I'm also awarding Mr. Rowan his legal fees." She signed the final decree. Lucy's face went pale. Outside the courthouse, James stood on the steps watching cars go by. The spring air was still cold, but the worst of winter was over. Trees were starting to bud. Lucy came out 10 minutes later. She walked straight toward him. "You let them think I'm a liar," she said. James looked at her, really looked at her. She seemed smaller somehow, harder around the eyes. "You did that yourself," he said. "I was trying to build a new life. On top of lies. You don't understand what it was like. Being trapped in that house with you. You weren't trapped. You chose to stay. Then you chose to lie about why you left." Lucy's jaw tightened. "You're making me out to be some kind of villain. I didn't make you do anything. I just showed the judge what you actually did. You could have let this go quietly. You introduced another man as your husband in front of everyone we know. You accused me of abuse. You try to take everything. Why would I let that go quietly? Because you're supposed to love me." James almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so disconnected from reality. "I did love you," he said. "That's over now." He walked to his car. Lucy called after him, but he didn't turn around. That was the last full conversation they ever had. James rented an apartment on the east side of town. Small, clean, quiet. He bought furniture from a discount store and set up his computer in the second bedroom. Work continued normally. A few people had asked about the divorce at first, but that faded after a couple weeks. People moved on. There was always new gossip. He learned about William through a mutual friend who didn't realize she was sharing something James might care about. "Did you hear about Lucy and that guy she left you for?" They were at a coffee shop. James was meeting someone to discuss a freelance project. The mutual friend had stopped by their table to say hello. "I haven't heard anything," James said. "Apparently he's kind of intense, like really controlling. He checked her phone, tells her what to wear. Lucy was complaining about it to someone who told someone else who told me." "Ah," James said. "You don't seem surprised. People usually show you who they are eventually." The friend lingered for a moment, maybe expecting James to say more. When he didn't, she made an excuse about being late and left. James went back to discussing the freelance project. But that evening he thought about it. William had seemed confident at the holiday party. Self-assured. The kind of man who was used to being listened to. Lucy had positioned him as her escape. Her freedom. The relationship that proved James had been holding her back. If William was controlling, that meant Lucy had traded one situation for another. Except she'd chosen this one. That was the difference. 3 months after the final hearing, James got a call from an unknown number. He didn't answer. Then he got a voicemail. Lucy's voice. "Hey, I know we're not supposed to talk, but I just wanted to reach out. I'm going through something, and I could really use someone to talk to. Can you call me back?" James deleted the voicemail. 2 days later, another call. Another voicemail. "James, please. I know things ended badly, but we were friends once. I just need someone who knows me, who understands. Please call me." He didn't call her. A week after that, a text message from Lucy's number. "William kicked me out. I don't have anywhere to go. I'm not asking for money. I just need to talk to someone." James read the message 3 times. Then he blocked her number. He heard the rest of the story later, pieced together from people who knew Lucy. William had come home one day and told Lucy to pack her things. No discussion. No warning. He'd accused her of causing drama, of being unstable, of not respecting his boundaries. He'd changed the locks while she was at work. Lucy had shown up to find her belongings in boxes on the front porch. She called friends. Some of them let her stay for a few days. Then a week became too long. People had their own lives, their own problems. Lucy moved 3 times in 2 months. She posted on social media once, something vague about healing and betrayal and learning to trust again. The kind of post that was fishing for sympathy without directly asking for it. 8 people liked it. No one commented. A year after the divorce was finalized, James drove past the old house. Someone else lived there now. They'd painted the front door blue and put in new landscaping. The lawn looked better than it ever had when James lived there. He didn't feel anything looking at it. That surprised him at first. He expected nostalgia or regret or something. But the house was just a building. The marriage was just a period of time that had ended. He kept driving. His life had rebuilt itself quietly. New routines, new boundaries. He'd taken the freelance project seriously, and it had turned into steady work. He'd started going to the gym regularly, not to meet people, just to move his body and clear his head. He dated occasionally. Nothing serious. He was upfront about that. Some women appreciated the honesty. Others wanted more and moved on when he couldn't give it to them. That was fine. James had learned something important from his mother. You couldn't control what other people did. You could only control how you responded, how you prepared, how you protected yourself. Lucy had wanted him to be the villain in her story, the controlling husband, the obstacle she had to overcome, the reason she needed to run to William. But the evidence told a different story, and evidence didn't care about feelings. One evening in late November, James sat by Madison Lake watching the sunset. The temperature had dropped below freezing. Most people were inside. He had the shore to himself. His breath made fog in the air. The water was dark and still. James thought about the holiday party, about Lucy raising her glass and introducing William as her husband, about the way she'd looked at him across the room. She'd expected him to make a scene, to argue, to give her the dramatic confrontation that would prove he was everything she'd claimed. He'd walked out instead. That had set the tone for everything that followed. Lucy had built her case on emotion, on the story of what she felt, on the narrative she needed to be true. James had built his case on documentation. Emotion faded. Stories changed. Memories became unreliable. But bank statements didn't lie. Text messages didn't change their content based on who was reading them. Timelines didn't shift to accommodate someone's preferred version of events. Lucy had taken what she thought she deserved. The money, the furniture, the sympathy, the fresh start with a new man who she thought would be better. James had kept what mattered. His integrity, his evidence, his self-respect. The difference between them wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about who understood that actions had consequences, and who thought they could rewrite reality to avoid those consequences. James stood up and brushed frost off his jacket. The sun had set completely now. The lake was just a dark shape against a darker sky. He walked back to his car, started the engine, and drove home. Tomorrow, he had a meeting about a new project. Next week, he was having dinner with his mother. In 2 weeks, he'd scheduled a weekend trip to check out a photography workshop he'd been interested in for years. His life was moving forward, not dramatically, not with grand gestures or moments of revelation, just steadily, quietly, with purpose. Lucy had wanted to control the narrative. James had simply insisted on the truth. And in the end, that made all the difference. Winter settled over Madison Lake like it always did. Heavy, complete, the kind of cold that made everything feel sharper. James had learned to appreciate winter, the clarity it brought, the way it stripped things down to essentials. No pretense, just survival and persistence. His apartment was warm. He'd made it comfortable without making it complicated. A couch, a good bed, a desk where he worked, books on shelves, photos from trips he'd taken. Nothing belonged to anyone else. Nothing carried memories he didn't want. He was drinking coffee one Saturday morning when his mother called. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Good. Working on a new project. Are you eating properly?" James smiled. Some things never changed. "Yes, Mom. I ran into Patricia at the grocery store." "You remember Patricia? She used to work with me at the insurance company." "I remember. She asked about you. Said her daughter just moved back to the area and is single." "Mom, I'm just saying, you don't have to be alone forever." "I'm not alone. I'm just not married anymore." His mother was quiet for a moment. "You know I'm proud of you, right? For how you handled everything. You taught me well. I taught you to protect yourself. You figure out the rest." They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. His mother's garden plans for spring, the new restaurant that had opened downtown, the neighbor's dog that kept getting loose. Normal things. When James hung up, he thought about what his mother had said, about not being alone forever. The truth was, he didn't feel alone. He felt clear. There was a difference. In December, James got an email from someone he didn't recognize. The subject line said, "Question about Lucy Rowan." He almost deleted it. Instead, he opened it. "Mr. Rowan, my name is Rebecca Tan. I'm an attorney representing William Crowell in a civil matter. I understand you were previously married to Lucy Rowan and that she made financial claims during your divorce proceedings. Would you be willing to speak with me about your experience? Mr. Crowell is pursuing legal action related to fraudulent debt transfer, and your testimony could be relevant." James read the email twice. Then he called his own lawyer. "Should I respond to this?" he asked. "That depends. Do you want to help William Crowell?" "I don't care about William Crowell. But if Lucy lied to him the same way she lied about me, that seems relevant. You're not obligated to get involved." "I know." His lawyer paused. "But if you do get involved, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Not revenge. Not anger. Just facts. That's all I have to offer anyway." James emailed Rebecca Tan back and agreed to a phone call. They spoke 3 days later. Rebecca was professional and direct. She asked specific questions about the timeline of Lucy's debt accumulation, about the credit card transfers, about what Lucy had told the court regarding her financial situation. "Mr. Crowell didn't know about the debt until it was too late," Rebecca explained. "Lucy told him it was their shared expenses. It wasn't until he reviewed the statements that he realized the charges were from before they were together. He's pursuing fraud charges. Will those go anywhere?" James asked. "Probably not criminally, but civilly, we have a strong case. The debt transfer was clearly fraudulent. Lucy signed documents claiming the debt was joint when it wasn't. What do you need from me? Just the truth. What you told the court. What you can verify. I can do that." James sent over copies of the documents his lawyer had submitted during the divorce. The timeline, the forensic accountant's report, the evidence that Lucy had been funding a relationship with William while still married to James. 2 weeks later, Rebecca called again. "Your documentation was incredibly helpful. We've submitted it as part of our case. I wanted to thank you for your cooperation." Did Lucy respond? "She tried to claim the debt was legitimate, but your evidence shows a pattern of dishonesty that undermines her credibility. The judge isn't sympathetic." James thanked her and hung up. He felt nothing about it. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just the quiet knowledge that truth accumulated, that lies had a shelf life, that eventually reality caught up. Lucy tried calling him again in January. Different number, same voice on the voicemail. "James, I know you probably hate me. I understand that, but I'm in real trouble now. William is suing me. The credit card company is threatening collections. I don't know what to do. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But please, I need help." James listened to the voicemail twice. Then he saved it, not because he planned to use it, just because it was evidence. Evidence of Lucy reaching out. Evidence that he hadn't responded. Evidence that he'd maintained boundaries. He didn't call her back. 3 days later, another voicemail. "I can't believe you're ignoring me. After everything we went through together. After 4 years of marriage. I thought you were better than this." James deleted that one. The call stopped after that. February brought a cold snap that dropped temperatures below zero for a week straight. James worked from home most days, only going out when necessary. The city felt frozen in place, waiting for spring that was still months away. He got a message from the mutual friend who'd told him about Lucy and William months before. "Did you hear? Lucy moved out of state. Someone said she went to Arizona or New Mexico. Somewhere warm." James thanked her for the information. He wasn't surprised. When everything fell apart in one place, some people rebuilt. Others ran. Lucy had always been good at running. Spring came slowly that year. March stayed cold. April brought rain instead of warmth. By May, things finally started to thaw. James took his mother to dinner for her birthday. They went to a nice restaurant downtown. Not fancy, just nice. Over dessert, she asked him if he'd started dating seriously. "Not yet," he said. "Are you open to it?" "Eventually, when I meet someone worth the effort." His mother smiled. You're pickier than you used to be. I'm smarter than I used to be. Good. They finished dessert, and James drove her home. She lived in a small house on the north side of town. The same house she'd bought after her divorce was finalized. She paid it off 10 years ago. You did okay, James said, pulling into her driveway. What do you mean? After everything. You rebuilt. You made it work. His mother looked at him. So did you? Not yet. Still rebuilding. That's how you know you're doing it right. You don't rush. You do it carefully. James hugged her goodnight and drove home. In June, James took the weekend photography trip he'd been planning. A workshop in the northern woods. 2 days of learning composition and lighting and how to see what was actually there instead of what you expected to see. The instructor was a woman in her 60s who'd been shooting professionally for 40 years. Photography is about truth, she said on the first day. Not the truth you want to show. The truth that exists whether you capture it or not. James thought about that while framing shots of trees and water and rocks. Truth that existed whether you captured it or not. Lucy had tried to create her own truth. The story of who she was and who James had been and why she'd needed to leave. But the actual truth had existed regardless. Bank statements, text messages, dates and times and documented facts. You couldn't Photoshop reality. You could only choose whether to acknowledge it. By August, a year and a half after the divorce was finalized, James had established a rhythm that felt sustainable. Work was steady. He'd taken on 2 more freelance clients and was considering going fully independent. He'd started dating someone. Casual for now. A woman named Emma who worked at the library and liked hiking. They'd been on 4 dates. She laughed easily and didn't push for definitions. He told her about the divorce on their second date. Do you still talk to your ex? Emma had asked. No. Are you over it? Yes. That was quick. The marriage ended long before the divorce did. Emma had nodded. Fair enough. They'd gone hiking after that, and she hadn't asked about Lucy again. James appreciated people who understood boundaries. One afternoon in early September, James was at the grocery store when he saw someone who looked like Lucy from behind. Same hair, same build, same way of standing with weight shifted to one hip. He felt his heart rate increase slightly. Then the woman turned around. Not Lucy, just someone who looked similar from a distance. James finished his shopping and went home. That night, he thought about the moment, about his body's automatic response to seeing someone who might have been Lucy. Not fear exactly, just alertness. The recognition that some people represented complications you'd chosen to leave behind. He'd chosen to leave Lucy behind, not out of hatred, not out of anger, just out of the simple understanding that some relationships were meant to end. And once they ended, you didn't go back. October brought the kind of fall weather that made Minnesota worth the winters. Clear skies, cool air, trees turning gold and red. James went to his mother's house for Sunday dinner. She'd invited Emma, which meant she was taking the relationship seriously even if James and Emma weren't. Emma brought wine. His mother made pot roast. After dinner, his mother showed Emma photos from James's childhood. Embarrassing ones. James sat on the couch and let it happen. You were a serious kid, Emma said, looking at a photo of 8-year-old James reading a book while other kids played in the background. I like books, James said. You like being prepared, his mother corrected. You used to make lists for everything. What you needed for school, what you wanted for your birthday. You even made a list of rules for your treehouse. Did anyone follow the rules? Emma asked. Just James, his mother said, smiling. Later, driving Emma home, she asked about the lists. Do you still do that? Make lists for everything. Sometimes, James said. Does it help? It keeps things clear. Emma looked at him. You're different from most people I've dated. Good different or bad different? Just different. You're very self-contained. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. James appreciated the honesty. In November, James got a letter in the mail. No return address. Lucy's handwriting. He opened it standing in his kitchen. James, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I hurt you, and I know you've moved on. But I wanted to write this anyway because I need to say it. I was wrong. About a lot of things. About William. About what I thought I wanted. About how I handled the divorce. I thought I was trapped in our marriage. I thought you were the problem. I thought if I could just get away, everything would be better. But I was the problem. I made bad choices. I lied about things that didn't need to be lies. I hurt you on purpose because I want to feel like I was right. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. Why I did? What I threw away. You were good to me, better than I deserved. And I repaid that by making you into a villain so I could justify doing what I wanted to do. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to respond to this. I just needed to say it. Lucy. James read the letter 3 times. Then he put it in a folder with the rest of the divorce documents. Not because he was keeping it as evidence, just because it was part of the record, part of the story of what had happened and how it had ended. He didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, just out of clarity. Lucy's apology was for her, not for him. She needed to feel better about what she'd done. He didn't need anything from her. December came again. A year since Lucy had called asking for help. 2 years since the holiday party where she'd introduced William as her husband. James was doing fine. Better than fine, actually. Work was going well. Emma was still around. They'd had the "what are we doing" conversation and decided they were dating exclusively, but taking things slow. His mother was healthy. His apartment felt like home. He'd started taking photographs seriously. Not professionally, just for himself. Documenting the world as it actually was. Truth that existed whether you captured it or not. On Christmas Eve, James stood by Madison Lake again. The water was frozen this time, covered in snow. The shore was quiet. He thought about Lucy's letter, about her apology, about whether it mattered. The truth was it didn't. Not because he was holding a grudge, just because her apology didn't change what had happened. She'd made choices. Those choices had consequences. An apology didn't erase the choices or the consequences. It just acknowledged them. James had acknowledged them a long time ago. He'd acknowledged that Lucy had lied, that she tried to take more than she deserved, that she'd painted him as an abuser to justify her own actions. And he'd responded with evidence, with documentation, with truth, not to punish her, just to protect himself. That was the difference between them. Lucy had spent her energy trying to control how people saw her. James had spent his energy making sure people saw what was actually true. And in the end, truth won. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or vindication or crushing victories. Just quietly, steadily, inevitably. James walked back to his car. The temperature was dropping as the sun set. He turned on the heat and started driving home. Emma was coming over later. They were going to cook dinner together and watch a movie. Nothing fancy, just a quiet evening. Normal things. Good things. James smiled. He'd survived. More than that, he'd rebuilt. Not by fighting Lucy's narrative with his own narrative, but by insisting on facts, on evidence, on reality. Lucy had wanted him to be the villain. He'd refused a role, and that refusal had been more powerful than any argument, more powerful than any defense, more powerful than any attempt to convince people he was right. He simply showed them what was true and let them decide. Most people, when given the choice between a good story and documented evidence, chose the evidence. That was what Lucy had never understood. She thought charisma and emotion and the right words could override reality. But reality didn't care about any of that. Reality just existed. And eventually, everyone had to deal with it. James pulled into his parking lot. Lights were on in his apartment. Emma's car was already there. He grabbed the groceries from his passenger seat and headed inside. The warmth hit him as soon as he opened the door. Emma was in the kitchen, already starting on dinner. "You're early," James said. "I finished my errands. Hope that's okay." "It's fine." They cooked together. Easy. Comfortable. Emma told a story about a kid at the library who'd checked out 30 books at once. James listened and added vegetables to the pan. After dinner, they settled on the couch with wine and a movie neither of them had seen before. Halfway through, Emma leaned against his shoulder. "This is nice," she said. "It is. Do you ever think about the future? Like what you want your life to look like in 5 years?" James considered the question. "I used to think about it a lot," he said. "Making plans. Having everything mapped out. And now I'm just making sure each day is built on truth. Whatever comes from that is what's supposed to happen." Emma looked up at him. "That's very zen. That's very tired of dealing with lies." She laughed. "Fair enough." They finished the movie. Emma stayed over. In the morning, James woke up to sunlight coming through the window and Emma still asleep beside him. He lay there for a minute, just being present. This was his life now. Not perfect, not dramatic, just real, built on foundations that wouldn't shift because they were based on truth. Lucy had taught him something valuable, even if she hadn't meant to. She'd taught him that you couldn't build anything lasting on lies. That manipulation and control and carefully crafted narratives might work for a while. But eventually, reality caught up. And when it did, the only thing that mattered was whether you'd been honest. James had been honest. Not perfect, not blameless, not without flaws, but honest. And honest was enough to build on. He got up quietly and started making coffee. Emma wandered into the kitchen a few minutes later, wrapped in one of his sweaters. "Morning," she said. "Morning. What's the plan today?" James poured 2 cups of coffee. "I was thinking we could go take some photos by the lake. The ice should be pretty this time of year. You and your camera. You don't have to come. I want to." They bundled up and drove to the lake. The shore was frozen solid. The sun made everything bright and sharp. James took photos of ice formations, of bare trees against blue sky, of Emma walking ahead of him, leaving footprints in the snow. Truth that existed whether you captured it or not. But worth capturing anyway, because this was real. This was his life, and he'd fought for the right to build it on his own terms. Not by destroying Lucy, not by seeking revenge, just by refusing to let lies become the foundation of his reality. That was enough. That was everything.